At this point, you're listening to the Mid-Mod Remodel podcast for more than just reno tips and tricks. You like a history deep dives. I do too. So today we're both in for a treat because I've got a conversation with Mr. MCM History Deep Dive himself, Adam Stevens. Adam and I are going to be talking about a particularly cool micro neighborhood of Denver, Sunset Lanes, where every house has the exact same floor plan, but it's an amazing plan, and they all look different on the outside. Then he's going to share some stories about the way that his work as an amateur historian affects his process of helping people buy and sell mid-century homes, and the way that knowing more about the history of a house being purchased helps make his buyers feel more like they're getting not just a commodity, but a home, something that they can steward and hand on to the next generation with happiness and a sense of connection. I always love a chat with Adam because I'm guaranteed to learn something new about mid-century homes, history, about Denver, and to find some fun new connections between those things and my existing understanding of this great era of houses. So, hey there, welcome back to Mid-Mod Remodel. This is the show about updating MCM homes, helping you match a mid-century home to your modern life. I'm your host, Della Hansman, architect and mid-century ranch enthusiast, and you're listening to episode 1805. By the way, if you want to know more about Adam and the great work he does documenting, promoting, and matching people with mid-century and modern homes, you've got options. You can follow him on Insta, dig in more deeply on his second Instagram account specifically about the Harvey Park neighborhood in Denver, or check out a pair of episodes where he and I chatted a few years ago about becoming the historian for your own home and about Cliff May and his influence on modern Denver. That would be episodes 1103 and 1104. Find links to all of those great Adam resources on my show notes page at midmod-midwest.com/1805. Here we go. Mid-century homes have so many clever design features, and one of them is just the way that they organize their spaces. Today, let's talk about how sleeping spaces and living spaces play out in a mid-century house. And we're going to do some history here. Let's talk about how houses were changing and specifically how the idea of sleeping versus living spaces was changing in Denver, in your area of specialty and expertise around the 1950s.
Yeah. So in Denver, but I think this was true across the country.
Yeah.
Home builders were, the whole home building landscape was changing. It was going from little builders building 4 or 5 houses on a block to home building becoming a huge business, to actually the idea of homes and neighborhoods being built, becoming merchandise. Homes were marketed, advertised, and sold as a product more so than just being an individual one-off building on a block. Right. And that really changed how homes were designed. And, part of it was trying to figure out how to mass produce them, but also trying to design something that the buyer wanted. Every builder was competing against each other to try to have the better design. And so I have this huge collection of advertisements, and I love to go through and see what the bullet points are on, what features home builders thought were important. Yeah. And one of those builders that comes up, and one of those bullet points that comes up on a lot of advertisements is, clear divisions between living and sleeping areas. And when you look at how both traditional and mid-century modern homes were laid out in the 1950s, most of them, if not all of them, had some kind of very clear division between living and sleeping areas, which I think is great because there was this notion, these homes were, and I'm, as an agent, I'm not supposed to talk about families and how they relate to real estate, but in the 1950s, builders were building homes for families. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was, all right, you're an adult, you put your kids to bed, you still want to hang out with your friends or neighbors. There's that need to have that clear division between those two spaces.
And it was kind of a social life at home moment in time, too, for reasons good and bad in the culture. A lot of it was sort of racism and redlining and things like that. But people were, for many reasons, wanting to entertain in their homes, live in their homes, and have social lives in their homes. And having that separation was really important. If you think about it in comparison to like a bungalow from the 30s, those often have sort of bedrooms slotted in around the other spaces to fit into the footprint.
Yep.
But that's much less the case in mid-century homes. And before we started recording, you were telling me about a neighborhood that had a really thoughtful division of those two spaces that was even thinking about building in acoustic privacy with a layout.
Yeah. So there's a group of homes up in the Denver suburb of Westminster. It's a group of 99 houses that were built by a builder who actually just offered a single floor plan. And these are actually unusual because from the outside, not all of them look like mid-century modern homes, but they actually are. Because when you get inside, they actually have very open plans in the living areas, vaulted ceilings and walls that don't go all the way up to the ceilings. And so they're actually really cutting edge houses, even though they don't look like it from the outside.
Interesting.
And they were also designed by an architect, and we know who the architect is. He actually went to school at MIT and Harvard, so like he was a big deal. But he designed this really efficient floor plan, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and he set it up so that the living area and the sleeping area, if you look at it the way architects look at it, which I know isn't how normal people look at things,
Yeah.
you realize that he had actually planned this house in 2 separate pavilions in a way. And so the living pavilion is what I call it. Had a living room, a kitchen, and a dining area, and then a hallway that connected the front door and the back door. That was actually meant to provide cross ventilation. So you'd have a screen
Nice.
door on both of those, and you open the door and you get cross ventilation. But it also acted as a way of circulating through that main living area. It was a hallway.
And if
And
there's
then,
glass in both of those doors, it's bringing you right through into daylight immediately as you enter
yeah,
the
that
door.
too.
Nice.
Cross ventilation and daylight and circulation. And then in parallel to that, so there was an opening in the hallway, in the side of the hallway, that then went into another hallway that ran in parallel to that, that served the bedrooms and the bathroom. And I
Interesting.
think the big idea was that in that opening, you could put like one of those wood folding walls that were common in the 1950s, and you could really acoustically close it off, although I haven't actually seen any examples with those installed.
Do you
But
think they had all been removed, or do you think it was like an optional add-on that most people didn't choose?
my guess is maybe it was an idea that the architect had that maybe the builder got
Okay,
engineered
well,
out.
that's a thing
But
that
it's a
can
big
happen.
opening. It's not just a little 3 foot opening. It's more like a 4 foot opening. So it feels like it was sized for
Uh-huh.
something like that to be put in. So, and that separate hallway had a set of closets that wasn't originally meant for laundry, although some people put their laundry in it eventually. But it was just that row of closets in the hallway provided storage. And then it provided access to the 3 bedrooms. But what it also did is, particularly if you had that folding wall and you had it closed, it created an acoustic buffer between that living area and the bedrooms on the other side.
Nice.
And on the 1 bedroom, the largest bedroom that actually touched the living room wall, that bedroom had its closet on that wall, which also provided an acoustic buffer between the living area and the sleeping area. And so to me, when I look at that floor plan, there's a very clear division between those two areas.
Yeah. And that really lets you live sort of a life that operates on different time schedules in the house very
Hmm.
effectively and gives you all of the benefits of an open plan social area without feeling like there's no sound private space in the house.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, if you really believe in your floor plan, you can replicate it times 99 and just offer it as the answer.
Yeah,
But that's an interesting type of confidence. I'm not
it
that
is,
kind of
but
architect, but
it's
I
not
love
the
it.
only example. We actually have several examples here in Denver, both of traditional and of mid-century modern homes where a builder built with a single floor plan. And
And
so in the case of that neighborhood, Sunset Lanes, it was a single floor plan, but there were several different window packages, and the houses were placed on the lot in different ways.
interesting.
So when you go down the streetscape, it's not the same row of the exact same house. They actually look different as you go down the street because some have their front door facing the street, some have their front door off to the side, just based on how the house was dropped on the lot. And then some of them had whole window walls that faced the street, and others had just little clear story windows or a row of smaller windows. And a lot of them were trying to take advantage of mountain views that actually existed in the neighborhood.
Got it. Do they still exist?
Um,
Or was that a relic of the past?
believe it or not, this is one of the very few neighborhoods where the mountain views actually still exist. And that has to do with a railroad right of way and an open space that's to the west of that neighborhood, which has prevented anything from blocking their views. So it's actually really rare to find that.
Sounds like an amazing hidden gem. When we
It
post this,
is.
we'll have to put some photos of that neighborhood and what that house
Yes.
plan is into the story to go with it.
Yeah. And I also have a friend who he owns a house there and he's renovating his house and he's been putting videos of his renovation on YouTube. So I'll have to give you his account is and you can
I'm
share.
gonna go out on a limb and assume any friend of yours is probably doing a fairly historically sensitive update with their project.
It's a what you might call a restovation.
Okay.
The combination of renovation and restoration. So
Well, and maybe this is a topic for another conversation, but I think that choice to make that separation between sleeping and living was a relic of or a representation of the social needs of its time. And as our social situations change, our houses are also being updated and modified to sort of meet now and meet the future and sort of last longer and more decades of
yeah.
different family
But
structures, different
having
homes.
raising kids of my own, and living in a mid-century home that also has a pretty clear division between living and sleeping areas, I really appreciate that design element. It's something that stood the test of time.
Yeah, it's a good setup for post bedtime lifetime. It's a really
Exactly.
smart idea for a family home. Yeah, excellent.
Exactly.
Well, this has been fun. Let's do it again very soon. You can love your house without knowing a lot about it, but when you know some more of the background, who lived there before, who created it, who built your neighborhood and why, it can give you so much more depth. So today, I wanted to just ask you a little bit about your experience of sharing stories and history with people who are in homes, who are looking for homes, and how that seems to change the way they feel about houses that might be theirs or that they already have made their home.
Yeah, this is a part of my daily life as a real estate agent and in this specialty. Um, it started though way back before I was a real estate agent. My wife and I are now in our 20th year in our home.
Wow,
We'll
that's
be in
great.
December, we'll be celebrating 20 years. And about 8 years in, I started, we didn't know anything about our house. We just thought it was cool.
Mhm.
And that's it. But I had heard inklings around the neighborhood that there was this guy named Cliff May who may have designed these houses and things like that.
Just
And
thought it was
so
cool, huh?
one day I decided I was going to go hunting to see if like there was really a connection. And so I went to the library and I started digging through the old newspapers that were on microfiche, which is actually the only way you can still access the Denver Post to this day, which is crazy. Um,
Wild.
and I actually ran across advertisements for my home. And I was like, this is amazing. This is like a thing. And then I read the advertisement, and man, 1950s ad copy is just the best.
I mean,
They
it was a
they could sell
craft,
me a
right?
house any day. But it really covered all the things. And like, all the things that you hear about mid-century modern design where like it's about indoor outdoor connection and things like that. Half of it you wonder, is this just people looking back and going, well, I mean, these are the things we observe about how they were designed. Was that really the program? Was that really what they were doing? And sure enough, in this ad, it called it out. This home connects the indoors to the out of doors. And I'm like, man, that's so
There
cool.
it is. Oh, that
And
is
so
great.
I fell down the rabbit hole. Not only did I discover the story of my home, but I discovered the story of my entire neighborhood. And I even have this interactive map in Google Maps now that shows all of the builders in the neighborhood on the map. There were more than 10 builders in my neighborhood. My neighborhood is actually a huge subdivision. It has 4,300 houses in it,
Okay.
which is massive. All mid-century, all built between 1954 and roughly 58. And all of these different builders are building this neighborhood at the same time. And so I've learned the story of all these builders and I've shared it to my neighbors. And most of the people are like, I had no idea that's who built my home. I had no idea that I lived in the Norman model or whatever, because again, we're marketing houses now. So this is
Mhm.
merchandising houses. So the different model homes have names or they have model numbers, or then you learn like, oh, this builder also built homes in another neighborhood. And like now I can go see what my model looked like over in that town. And like all of these things give the homes context.
Yeah.
And so, and then you learn the story of the builders, and a lot of them have interesting stories of their own. And suddenly your home has a history, has something to take pride in, something that like when you have friends over, you can be like, let me tell you something about my house. And it's more than just a house then.
Yeah. It's a connection. And, in one of these earlier chats, I was talking with Susan Halla of Make It Mid-Century, who's lovely. And we were talking about the idea of, yes, we're homeowners. It's property. It's also our spot, our identity right now. But when you live in a mid-century home, you are not the first person. We are not the first people who've lived in mid-century homes anyway.
Yep.
And so there's this sense of legacy. And in a way, there's also a sense of stewardship that we're part of a progression of history. Somebody else is going to live in these houses later. As long as we might hope to hang on,
Yeah.
I don't want to burn this house around me like a Viking ship. And so that sense of like where you fall in the timeline and what people wanted in the past, and even marketing copy. That's fascinating that indoor outdoor concept is not something we have made up and
Yeah.
on a
Not
mid-century home.
something we paid and we made up later. It was really a selling point of these houses.
It's great. I think it makes us feel like we're more part of our community with our house. And that's so devoid. I mean, you are in the business of helping people to purchase homes. It's a commodity, it's a shelter, but
Yeah.
it's also part of our identity. And I think it's part of something bigger. And it's really nice to be able to give them, along with information about mortgage rates and school districts, to also help them sort of connect to the history of Denver and the history of wherever you are looking for a house. And
It
that's
is.
house. That's
And
magic.
with certain examples, like the Cliff May homes, like I live, people realize that these are historically significant homes, even though we're not in a landmark district or historic district or anything like
Mhm.
that. We probably could qualify as one. But then that means that people will actually pay more for a house that has its original architecture. And so
Yeah.
I was fortunate earlier this year to sell a house here in the neighborhood that had never sold before. The
Wow.
homeowners bought it in 1954 and they lived out their entire lives in that home. And their children hired me to sell the house. And they had done a few things, like they had put carpet down on the oak floors, and they changed the bathroom at one point. But otherwise, from an architectural standpoint, architectural historians use this term architectural integrity for
Mhm.
describing how original a historic piece of architecture is. It had extraordinary architecture integrity. It even had its original roof, which
Oh,
unfortunately ended up being an issue because the insurance company for the buyers didn't want to cover it. So we actually had to change it, but it was actually in great condition. It was the original tar and gravel roof that had been put on the house in 1954, and it was still in good condition, even
those
though
are
the
important.
insurers didn't want to cover it. But
Oh man, if that isn't our modern condition, that's so frustrating.
right,
Fixing
but
something that's not broken because you can't put a category on it because it's
right.
older than your categories.
So typically, most real estate agents would be like, "All right, I have a house here that really hasn't been updated in 70 years, so we're going to have to aim real low on the pricing, right?"
Mhm.
But when you really know your product and know what you're selling and realize that people will pay more for architectural integrity,
Yeah,
we listed the house for much more than you would have normally listed a house that hadn't been updated in 70 years. And people were willing to pay it
that's
because they
amazing.
recognize the story of the home.
And that is the thing that you should know if you are a real estate agent or if you are trying to sell a home. And
Or
on
even if you're a
the other end,
homeowner and you're thinking of renovating,
right, if you want to make
that
changes,
architectural integrity
has value.
matters.
As someone who has searched for homes and as someone who often chats with people who are looking for a home to fix up, I am trying to help them capture houses that have not been updated, that perhaps the people who are selling it don't even realize what a feature that is, and get value for it. But I would still encourage people to spend to get a house that has not been damaged, that has not had overlay that needs to be rolled
Mhm.
back, or choices that may have affected structure or that lost original good features.
Yeah.
It really is it maintains value, it increases value, I think, to have that connection to what the house was originally, even if needs must means that you have to do some tweaking to meet insurance regulations for the roof, or if you
Yep.
have to make some modifications to fit the way your lifestyle is going to have in the house. But if you can preserve anything or everything about the original house, you are preserving value in it. And that's a really important message you only get when you understand the history.
Absolutely.
And then only a real estate agent who understands the history and believes in it can appropriately pitch to people. So that's some
Guide
real
you
power.
through that. Yes, it's a big deal.
Well, I love that. That is such an example of what to do that comes with not just the sort of virtue of its nature, but also a price tag that benefits. So that's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I love the idea of people coming into a house. They might just like it because they think it looks cool, but also being gifted by someone who has helped them find it, that loved it,
Mm-hmm.
some of the history, some of the background. And then you can always go forward when I'm helping my master plan clients or my ready to remodel students learn more about their house. I'm talking about things like you need to know its dimensions, you want to know what materials are going on, you want to know about previous renovations, but you can also become an expert in your house just by learning its history and taking a trip to the perhaps microfiche section of your local library.
Yeah.
Ideally,
Fortunately, a lot of cities fortunately benefit from actually having their newspapers on services like newspapers.com
Yeah.
or I forget the other one, newspaperarchive.com. If your city has newspapers on there, I recommend paying for a subscription for a couple months and digging up everything you can about your neighborhood.
And
They have a search
also,
engine, everything is indexed. It's not like on the microfiche, it's basically like roulette. We're
hunt
gonna
and peck.
we're gonna put in a month and see what we find.
That is a labor of love, and I really salute you for taking it on. I'm lucky because I think we're going to talk in a future talk about the parade of homes. And Madison, as well as Denver, has a really good parade of homes. And Madison also has a long-standing parade of homes that started in the mid-century, has some amazing advertising literature that I can go visit in person at the local Builders Association office.
Oh, nice.
And our local paper is digitally archived. So I can go see the advertising spreads from the dates of the home parades
That's
going
great.
back to 1952.
And usually the advertising for those parades is over the top. It's the best advertising.
And it's everything because it's like the house builders, but also like electricians are advertising their servers and the latest in refrigerators.
Yes, and all the various products, appliances, things like that. Oh my God. How many mid-century ads have I seen where the garbage disposal is the headliner?
Right?
The Waste King garbage disposal.
Yeah. In the 1952 parade of homes, the things they're advertising are like the bathrooms have mirrors and a vanity by the sink. And I'm like, the bar is so low. But
it is, but
then it was new, it was fresh, it was
yeah.
exciting. People were excited about it.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds like a different topic. So I think we should just get back together again and do this again.
Sounds great.
So, what do you think about the concept of being a curator, a steward of your home, rather than just its owner? I'd love to hear what you think. So, reach out on Instagram or send me an email, share your thoughts. As a lover of all the qualities of mid-century homes that you, me, and Adam share, it's great to appreciate those, to love those original mid-century features when we find them. And even though sometimes we do need to make changes to our homes to fit the house for a different shape of family, for a new generation, for the way that we live in our houses in modern times, the more we can preserve those original features and qualities, the better. So speaking of, if you want to be able to visualize the original modern features of Sunset Lane houses, we talked about those in the first half of the episode. I have links. Find them and the transcript for this episode on the show notes page, midmod-midwest.com/1805. And I hope that you will find someone you want to recommend this episode to, because the concept of really appreciating our houses, the concept of being a curator for a mid-century house is something that more people can get excited about. And when people know and love more of the history of their homes and those original features become more valuable, more important, more preservable to them. So enjoy this moment to share in the mission of passing on a love for mid-century design, and I'll catch you next week.